yourself this morning. How you doing today? Good. Did you have a good week the rest of the week? Very good. I'm proud of you. Today, I want to talk to you about a shepherd. Do you know what a shepherd is? You forgot? What do you think a shepherd takes care of? Well, Jesus is our shepherd. You're beating me to the punchline. But Jesus is always a good, safe answer to try out when somebody's asking you questions in church, isn't it? Yeah. A shepherd's job is to take care of sheep. Have you ever seen a sheep before? They're cute. Mr. Ronnie put, when we sang that song this morning, Savior Like a Shepherd Lead Us, Mr. Ronnie did a great job of putting good pictures up there of sheep and of the different things that were going on in the song. I have a stuffed animal at my house that sits on my in my prayer closet to remind me that I am a sheep of God and to remind me that I'm to feed my sheep. And so what do you think a shepherd needs to do to make sure his sheep are cared for? You don't know? The song we sang this morning told us a little bit. So the shepherd takes tender care of the sheep, right? What does your mom do to take care of you? What does she do to make sure you're taken care of? Does she feed you? Yeah. Does she take care of you when you have a boo-boo? Yeah. When you're hurt? How else does your mom take care of you? You're going to be shy this morning, aren't you? You usually are full of answers, but you're just going to be shy. The shepherd feeds the sheep and makes sure they have all the food they need. The shepherd puts them to bed at night and makes sure they have a comfortable place and gives them the rest they need. Isn't that great that God does that for us too? That means we have a shepherd, and our shepherd is God. But it also means that sometimes we have a responsibility to be a shepherd for other people. When we see people that are hungry, to share our food with them. If we see somebody that's thirsty, to share our drink. If we see somebody that needs rest, to give them a place to rest. And so we remember that every day, that as God's people, we need to make sure we feed our sheep. That we remember that God takes care of us. And we let God take care of us. Right? Is there anything you'd like me to pray about today? You don't know? Nothing? How's mom and the baby? Good. You're naming her Clara? That's a beautiful name. Clara Sue. That's a great name. Are you excited? Good. Well, let's pray. We'll pray for Clara Sue. Okay. Dear God, I thank you so much for Will. I thank you that he's with us this morning and that his episode was not more serious than it was, and the doctors were able to tell us what we need to do to prevent it in the future. God, I thank you that your hand is always on Will. I thank you for all of the children and youth that are represented here in our congregation, for all that they mean to me and all they mean to this congregation. Lord, we lift up Sarah to you this morning and Clara Sue, and pray that you will continue to be with Clara Sue as she grows in her mommy's body, and that you will bring her safely into this world for Will to be a big brother to. Lord, I just pray that you will keep Will safe and all of our children safe this week. Put a hedge of protection around them and bring them back to our doors next week. In Jesus' name, thank you. Pray with me and for me, please. Dear God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing unto you, O Lord, our Redeemer. Empty me of all of me and fill me with all of you, so that it's your word and your word alone that shines through this day. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm wondering if you've experienced something that I experience when I sit down and look at Facebook. So how many of you are on Facebook? So about half of you will know what I'm talking about, and half of you will have to come up with something else with. So what happens on Facebook a lot of times is that it's a great thing when you are seeing pictures of your grandchildren and your nieces and nephews at their events and your friends, and friends from far and near, you can see what they're doing and keep up with the activities of their lives. My brother and sister, or my brothers, my sister didn't get to go this time, were at Carolina Rebellion this weekend. So they're at this concert, and I've been seeing Facebook pictures all weekend, so I know they're safe and they're sound and they're having a good time, and it's been fun to kind of watch that go on. But then there's another way that Facebook is used sometimes that can be kind of hard to deal with. So the other kind of thing that happens with Facebook sometimes is that people love to share their opinions on Facebook. And people love to let you know what is right and wrong in their opinion. And what can happen is you can get hooked into that. It's kind of like bait. You know, it's kind of like you're a fish swimming along, and oh, here's this nice juicy thing to talk about, and it just hooks you and baits you. And then you've got a Facebook post that has 300 comments under it because it's hooked so many people. So someone's going to say, and I'm going to make this very, very tame. Some people's going to say, I think peanut butter and jelly belong together, and I think everyone should eat jelly on their peanut butter sandwich. And then somebody else is going to come along and say, oh, you are going to hell because you think that jelly should be on peanut butter. Peanut butter should be eaten only by itself. And then you have another person that gets hooked and comes on there and says, oh, how dare you say that? I can't believe you would say, I can't believe you're a Christian and that you think that peanut butter and jelly should be eaten together. And it goes on and on and on, and you get hooked, and the more you get hooked, the worse your heart feels. You just get really agitated, and it's just, oh, but you've got to be right? I've got to be right. When I give in to that temptation to grab onto that hook, the rest of my day is shot. Because it gets stuck in my head, and I'll be thinking, oh, I should have said this. I should have said that, or maybe if I had said this, they would have gotten it. We always want to have the last word. We always want to be right, and we always want to get revenge. I think that's kind of human nature. I think sometimes we get into relationships and we want to retaliate. We want to see revenge happen when people hurt us. We've been talking about 1 Peter's and Peter's letter to the Christians that were scattered abroad, the 10 places, what we call the diaspora, and how they were feeling like strangers and exiles where they were, and where are those places that we feel like we are suffering from, where we're suffering, we're not at home. And I think that happens a lot of times in our relationships with each other, in our relationships in our families, in our relationships with our co-workers, in our relationships, period. And the very human thing when we are going through suffering is to want to get even. We want to even the score. We want to be right. So perhaps you live in a home where what's expected of you is that your spouse comes home in the evening, and it's expected that you would have had everything spick and span clean, and you've spent all day making sure that it was clean and a good place for your spouse to come home to, and supper's ready on the table, and your spouse walks in the door and says, well, I don't like that. Why did you cook that for supper? Well, why didn't you pick that up over there? You're worthless. And those words cut. And so what we want to do is shout out and yell and scream and retaliate and get revenge. And that happens in a lot of our relationships where people make us suffer. People cause suffering in us. And how are we as Christians supposed to respond to that suffering? What we really want to do is get revenge. What we really want to do is be right. What we really want to do is give word for word. What we really want to do when somebody insults is to hurl those insults back. David and I play this game in the car sometimes, and it's fun. We're not being serious. But we'll be driving down the road in the car, and we will do insult for insult, right? So he'll call me a name, and I'll call him another name. And he'll call me a name that he thinks is better than the name that I just called him, and then I'll call him another name. And we're laughing, and we're carrying on, and it's a game, and it's fun, and it's funny. But sometimes in life, that really happens. We want to get one up on the person who is causing us pain. Well, we're not the only ones that experience this and feel this, because the people that Peter was writing to experienced this as well. We're going to be looking at chapter 2 of 1 Peter this morning, and I'm going to start with verse 18. I put 19, but I'm going to start with verse 18 just so you know the context here, and then I'm going to say something about that. Slaves, submit yourselves to your masters with all respect, and only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. So Peter is talking in this particular thing. He's turned his attention to slaves. So one thing I want to be very clear about here is that Peter is not saying that slavery is okay. And he's not saying that it's okay for masters to beat their slaves. And he's not saying that any part of this is okay. But what he's telling us is when you're in a relationship of suffering, this is how I want you to react. I want you to react like Jesus. So he's not singling out slavery here. What he's done is he's made a turn in his letter, and he started telling them how they are to relate to people in their lives, whether it be a person in a position of authority or a person that you're equal with. So he starts out by talking about how we're supposed to relate to the government and how we're supposed to relate to people in authority over us in that way. And then he goes on to, then he turns to the slaves. So what he's doing is setting up the household rules for Christians. They have household rules that have been set, and that includes how masters and slaves relate to each other. It includes how husbands and wives relate to each other. It includes how children relate to their parents. And he's turning his attention to those relationships, and he's saying, this is the way it's written, but this is how I want you to react as a Christian. So he's not saying it's okay, but what he's recognizing is this is a reality. These relationships exist, and so this is how I want you to behave within these relationships. So he goes on to say, for it is a credit to you if being aware of God you endure pain while suffering unjustly. If you endure when you are beaten for doing wrong, what credit is that? But if you endure when you do right and suffer for it, you have God's approval. For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you should follow in his steps. Now I want to stop right there. And I want to say that I don't believe that Peter is saying that if you're being beaten, you should just stand there and take it. I don't think that's what he is saying at all. And we're going to go on to see what he might be saying. But I think a lot of times some people will say, see, you should just endure it. You should be a doormat. You should just let people walk all over you. You should take the beating for Christ, And I don't think Christ would approve of that and say that that's what you should do. I think you have every right to defend yourself when you are in physical danger. So I want to be clear this morning as we read this, that we read it in the context that it was written in, and that we understand that this is not Peter saying, stand there and take it, the way that some people might read into it. But what he is saying is that we have an example of suffering that we can follow. Christ is one who has suffered. And not only has he suffered, but he suffered for you, and he suffered for me. And so Peter is saying, here is your example. You follow in his steps. So if we took a footprint of Jesus and we wrote in it the characteristics of Jesus and how Jesus responded to suffering, then this would be a reminder of the footsteps we are to walk in when we're facing those relationships that are causing us pain, those relationships that are being abusive to us, those relationships that make us want to just lash out. And it says there, this is what you have been called to, follow in his footsteps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. So that's the first thing that Peter is telling us, when he's talking to us about how we react in these situations. When we react, there's a proverb that says, do not sin in your anger. It does not say, do not be angry. Angry is a very valid emotion, and Jesus has shown that emotion. He showed that emotion when he went into the temple, right? And they were exchanging money in the temple, and they were doing it unfairly and unjustly, and he turned over the tables. Anger is okay. It is okay to be angry. But what that proverb says is, do not sin in your anger. So it's how you react to that anger. It's what you do with that anger that sets you apart as a Christian. When you're angry, do not sin. He committed no sin. No deceit was found in his mouth. Don't go about making things bigger than they are. Don't try to deceive people in order to get what you want. Don't deceive people to get the retaliation that you want to get. When he was abused, he did not return abuse. And what the NIV says, and some of the other translations say here, is when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. And I think that was truer to the Greek than what the NRSV is when it says he did not return abuse. They were talking about abusive language here. And when people were insulting him, he didn't return insults. He either didn't say anything at all, or he would say something gracious and good. It kills David. It makes him so mad when he starts calling me names and he's angry at me and he's lashing out at me. And I just look at him and say, I love you. Shut up, Mom. I don't love you. That's okay. I love you, Sam. See, when we go and we start hurling those insults back at people when they insult us, all that does is make the fire bigger and bigger. It just pours gasoline on it. So if you insult me and I insult you back, I'm pouring gas on the fire. If you insult me and I just let it go, and I realize that you're going through something, and it's not for me to take personally, and I'm not going to take it personally, and I let it go, it's like pouring water on the fire. And you put that fire out. And we want to be a place that puts fires out. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but he entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. So this is the other thing that Jesus shows us. If we're going to walk in Jesus' footsteps when it comes to suffering, when it comes to people treating us unjustly, we're not going to make threats. And that's what Jesus did. When he was suffering, he didn't threaten. He spoke the truth. He spoke only the truth. And many times he used very few words in speaking that truth. And he went on. And he didn't make threats. Well, you just wait. This is going to happen to you, or that's going to happen to you. You just wait. I'm going to make sure the boss hears about this and you're going to lose your job. He doesn't do that. He leaves it to the one who judges justly. And that one is God. So when we are facing these kind of trials, the best place to fight that fight, and this was in the war room, the best place to fight that fight is in your prayer closet. Those of you that saw the war room, you know that there was a real estate agent who was trying to sell a lady's house, and this lady became her mentor in her spiritual life. And as part of that, she discovered that this lady had a prayer closet. And she called it her war room because she said, I can't fight these battles on my own. I cannot fight these battles. I am not going to win this battle. But God can win this battle. And so she put all of her wars, all the things she was fighting, she fought in that closet on her knees as she gave it to God. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes we want to fix everything ourselves. Sometimes we want to make it happen ourselves. Sometimes we don't want to wait on God. We become very impatient because sometimes these prayers can last a very long time, and you might not see any change right away. You might not feel any answers right away. But Peter is reminding us that this is how Jesus took care of business. How many times do we read in Scripture that Jesus went off by himself to pray? So friends, when you're facing these kind of situations in your relationships, whether it be with your husband, your children, your co-workers, within yourself, with your friends, with each other as a church fellowship and family, do not hurl insults back. Do not make threats. Instead, take it to God and let Him fight the battle for you. He Himself bore our sins in His body on the cross so that free from sins we might live for righteousness. By His wounds you have been healed, for you were going astray like sheep. But now you have returned to the shepherd and the guardian of your souls. You've heard a lot about shepherds this morning in what we have sang and done together. And that is to remind you of whose you are. As I told Will, I have a little sheep that sits on a table in my prayer closet. And a lady gave that to me, an elderly lady in a retirement home that I was a chaplain in when I was in school. My last day as a chaplain there, they had a little party, and she didn't feel like coming down, and she called down to the party room, and she said, send Pastor Kelly up to me. So I came up to her, and she greeted me at the door with this little stuffed sheep. And she said, Kelly, I don't care what degree you're getting. I don't care what kind of ordination you're getting. None of that stuff matters. What matters is that you feed your sheep. And I have that little sheep sitting on my counter to remind me every day when I go into that closet to pray that I have sheep that are dependent on me to feed them. But it also reminds me that I have a shepherd that's going to give me what I need to feed those sheep. You have a shepherd that cares for you very much, that loves you very much, that is going to take care of you in everything you face, no matter what it is that's ahead of you. No matter what kind of relationship issues you're dealing with, fight that battle in the closet with your shepherd. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. This morning, I'm going to do our confession time for communion in a different way. Normally we do an invitation and a confession and a pardon that we do all the time. And since we're talking about shepherds this morning, I thought it would be appropriate to use this confession. So what I'm going to do is read part of the 23rd Psalm to you, and then ask a question for you to reflect on for a minute as part of your time of confession before we take communion this morning. We love the 23rd Psalm. We say it prayerfully in seasons of sorrow. We recite its comforting words in periods of uncertainty. We rehearse the assurance it offers for times of trial, and we claim its promises as the very structural support of our faith and our life. At least we claim to do so. But maybe its words can also guide us in a moment of confession. Let us join together in silent confession, guided by the words and thoughts of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. With these words, I am saying that God provides me with everything I need. But do I really believe that? Spend some moments of reflection and confession on that question. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. If God is restoring my soul, why do I feel so tired and so exhausted, so run thin and so overwhelmed? Do I trust Him to give me the rest that I need? He leads me in the right paths for His name's sake. Am I really living my life on the right path in every aspect of my life? Would I be comfortable and even proud to have God go along with me everywhere I go? Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Then why am I always looking elsewhere for comfort and protection? Why do I have so many fears? Even though I walk through the darkest valley, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. I wonder what my life would look like if I really did trust God. I wonder how I would view others, including enemies, if I really believed God to be beside me. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Am I confident that God goes with me? Am I confident that I will live with God forever? Hear these words of assurance. The words are sure and true. The Lord is our shepherd and provides for us everything we need. Know that God is with you now, forgiving you, rejoicing to be in your presence, and willing to transform you by the power of the Holy Spirit into true and full disciples of the Son, Jesus, the crucified and resurrected one. Amen. In the name of Jesus Christ, you are forgiven.
Jesus Christ, you are forgiven.
Thanks be to God. Our hymn of response this morning can be seen on the screen. I invite you to stand as you are able to sing it before we take communion. And it is Have Thine Own Way, Lord. And as always, the altar is available if you need prayer this morning. Stand as you are able, please.
After I will, I am
Thank you, may be seated. You can sanitizer. I got it. Thank you, Lee.